Hello and welcome. In this lesson, we're going to look at Lambda function and user input in Python. My name is Mildred. A lambda is an anonymous function that we can use to create a function without a proper definition or a name. And where I find this useful, or I think that should be the general use of lambdas, is when we want to have a function inside of a function. Let's try to calculate the sum of two numbers, and let's say we want to do this inline, not by a function call. I can say z is equal to, I'll use the lambda keyword like this, and I want to say the lambda argument will be x and y, and I'll use a colon and say what I want this function to do with x and y is to return x plus y. So I'm going to write it lambda, give it the arguments I want, a colon, and the expression or the evaluation of those arguments. When I call this now, I say I want to print z, and I want to supply two arguments 5 and 6 in the call of the variable z. Now, because I stored the lambda in the variable called z, I'm going to call that lambda z, and in the parentheses of this z call, I'm going to supply the two arguments x and y, which is 5 and 6. When I save this and I run, I'm going to have the sum of 5 and 6, which is 11. Let's create a function and see how we can use lambda as an anonymous function inside a function. Let's say let's say expo, like this. We have something called expo, and in this expo we want to supply a number called x. What we want to do with this expo is to return lambda. We want to say the name of the anonymous function is a. We want whatever anonymous function a is passed, it should be raised to the power of x argument passed to the function call. How do we use this? Now, it looks a little complicated, but if you take your time, you'll begin to see that this is not as complicated. So let's say we want to do a square and we want to do the cube of this. So we'll do square and cube. Now, we have the square to be a function call, and we supply the value we want for x. That's what we want the anonymous function to be raised to the power of. So we want it to be raised to the power of 2. For the cube, we want it to be raised to the power of 3. Now we've called the function. We want to print out now square and supply what we want in the parentheses of the square call now. So we're going to call twice. We are saving the variable square, and square is equal to the function call. And for this function call for x, we are supplying what we want. Now we are going to be returning whatever we pass in for the lambda raised to the power of whatever we pass in as arguments for the function call. Now we want to pass in 2 and 3. So we are done with passing in x. Now we want to pass in the value of a. So for us to pass in the value of a, we want to print out whatever it is. So we're going to take square, which holds the function definition of 2, and we want to now pass in the value for the lambda. We also want to print the one for the cube like that, and we want to pass in the value. So if we say 2 raised to the power of 3, we should get 8 for the second print. And the first one, if we say 2 raised to the power of 2, we should get 4 for the second printout. Now this is not as complicated as it seems the first time, but when you practice it and try to understand it, you will see that lambdas will be very useful at some point in programming. So this is how simple and straightforward lambda is. We can use them as anonymous function. We can use them to write short functions inline that we can call, but this is the whole concept of lambdas in Python. So let's say we want to ask a user for input. For instance, I want to say first name is equal to, I'll use input function like this, and I will say enter your first name. Then I want to ask for last name, enter your last name. Then I want to print your first name is first name, your last name is last name. So we're just doing a basic print function like this. So I'll save this. When I clear and I run, what happens is until you put an input, when you are prompted to add an input, it is going to stall the execution of the rest until each input is provided. And so when I run now, I'm going to have enter your first name. I have to type my first name in, press enter, it will ask me for my last name. I'll type my last name in, enter, and it prints out the final statement. Your name is Mildred. In other programming language, you must have heard about arrays. Now in Python, there are no arrays. We can use lists as arrays. They do the same thing. So in case you are wondering why we have arrays on the course content, is for me to be able to tell you this, that when you're coming from JavaScript and other languages, arrays are a big thing. In Python, we do not have arrays on its own, or anything with a data type of array. What we have are lists, dictionaries, all the collection types and other data types that we have looked at. So you want to do something, like you're coming from JavaScript and you want to do something you did with arrays in JavaScript, in Python you can use lists. Thank you.